I want to ask everybody watching today a few questions. First, how do we measure brand success? Second, what parameters should we use? And what is deemed as the right marketing channels? All billion-dollar questions, which we'll find out soon. Let's wrap up the 2-day virtual conference with our final panel discussion on success measurement of branding and marketing. This panel discussion will be moderated by Chwa, Director of Marketing Communication for Asia Pacific from Frost & Sullivan. She has more than 15 years of experience in marketing and sales, specializing in strategic planning, project management, and business analytics in marketing communication, digital marketing, CX, and sales. She has remarkably established and developed a 360-degree marketing from foundation to a well-oiled machine for team and her department. Our first guest of this panel is Shirley Lau, who has a prolific career spanning more than 25 years. Her experience in branding encompasses both B2C and B2B businesses, where she has driven the marketing, branding, and communication strategies, business intelligence, and commercial sales. As Golden Screen Cinema's Chief Marketing Officer, Shirley is breaking new ground for Malaysia's leading cinema exhibitor as she aims to push its boundaries beyond movies into crafting an enriching cinema experience complete with merchandising, F&B, events, and more. Our second guest is the recently appointed Vice President of Malaysian Digital Association for the 2022 to 2024 term. He is also currently the Country Manager of Nuffnang, Malaysia, Asia's leading influencer and content marketing company. Kausern Hieu has more than 20 years of sales, digital marketing experience, and also hands-on expertise in leading and managing people across different levels within such organization types as startups, nonprofits, and media advertising agencies. Our third guest of this panel is dialing in live from Singapore. Haikel Fahim is the head of Southeast Asia at Telum Media, where he oversees teams based in Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, and Thailand. Haikel has been with Telum for over 8 years, building out operations in various markets and building relations with media and communication professionals. Prior to this, he has worked in communication teams in agencies and in an in-house setting. We are also very honored to have Telum Media on board as our Tech Trooper sponsor. This is definitely a great panel discussion that you don't want to miss. So if you have any questions from the panel, please post it in the chat box or in the comment section, and our panelists will address it at the end of the session if we have time. All right, let us get to our panelists and make sure that they're ready, and we'll be right back. Bye.
Hi, session for the day for our panel session. To kickstart our session, maybe we can start with a self-introduction by all of our panelists, as well as sharing with us the perspective of the future of Marcom in their organization. Perhaps you can start with Haikel.
Hi, of course. Hi, my name is Haikel, Haikel Fahim. I'm based in Singapore. Would love to actually join you guys in Malaysia, but unfortunately I'm stuck in Singapore right now. I am the region head for Southeast Asia at Telum Media. We sit in between the realm of communications and the media. We support both industries hand in hand. Well, because we obviously sit in between the realms of communications and the media, we think that there is much to do still in Southeast Asia, at least for myself within Southeast Asia, and see how to help the industry actually prosper. There's lots of opportunities still left to be explored between media and marketing professionals and communications professionals together to explore channels that has not been explored yet, to see the maturity of certain channels and content streams that's not been fully capitalized on just as yet. We've also done a survey earlier this year, which I think I will, at later parts of today's session, I can share some of the findings as well. But clearly, there's much to be explored in the media and comms industry.
Okay, thank you for that, Haikel. We will move on to Shirley.
Hi, my name is Shirley. I'm from Golden Screen Cinema. Obviously, I think Marcom is something that's very important for we're really in a unique position now where we're both a brand and a media owner. So I think ultimately at the end of the day, if we look at our consumers and people who watch movies, yeah, pretty much 70% would be in the category of 18 to 35 years old. And if you basically look at how they're consuming media, looking at how the changes of how today when they talk about wanting to get news, wanting to get entertainment news, whatever it is, it's always on digital media. So I think one of the most important things that we also see through the pandemic and now post-pandemic is the behavior and the consumption of media has changed drastically. Yeah, it's moved very, very much onto even more digital. But having said that, I think there's always a balance between what we do out of home, yeah, away from digital media, as well as the platforms themselves. So it's something that I think as we move along, we will see further changes. But human nature is such that I think all of us are social animals. Yeah, so for us, we're really in a very interesting era. Something that I think in the next couple of years we will see exciting stuff happening.
Thank you, Shirley. Kausern, can you share your introduction as well as your insights as well?
Sure, thanks. First of all, thanks, Shirley. Just let you know that almost every week I will make a beeline to cinema,
Thank you.
like a religion. So it is indeed. I enjoy the whole communal thing. Anyway, my name is Kausern. Today I wear two hats. I wear the hat of VP for MDA, Malaysian Digital Association. What MDA does is that it represents the voice of digital publishers, agencies in Malaysia. I also wear the hat of the country manager for Nuffnang Malaysia, the whole area of influencer marketing. I'm just going to talk a little bit more on the influencer marketing side because on the MDA side of things is a bit general. So with regards to influencer marketing, to know about what the future is, let's look a little bit on the past and the present and the future, right? So the past itself, I think way back even in the 18th century, influencer marketing has already started. I think one of the earliest recorded incident or example would be this particular queen by the name of Queen Charlotte back in Britain. What happens is that actually appointed this guy by the name of I can't remember his name, but anyway, he did potters. He's a pottery. And she actually kind of like endorsed this pottery, so it became really, really famous. So it's called Queen's Wear. So that was like way back in the 18th century. So kind of fast forward to a couple of years back ago, that was where celebrity endorsement happens. So remember the Michael Jordans of the world and so on. And then came digital internet and everything become democratized. This is where social media influencers start to appear a lot. So today is a lot about social media influencers. So where the future is would be actually really much more micros and nano influencers. We call them KOCs, key opinion consumers, right? And it will come in terms of communities. So what I mean by that is that you probably would know things like NFTs and so on. The success of NFTs is very much dependent on the community. So that would be the future of where influencers would be.
Thanks for that, Kausern. That's quite insightful, to the new future of Marcom. So how has COVID-19 affected your marketing strategy and vision in your industry? Perhaps we can start off with Shirley.
We had a terrible time. Yeah, we really had an awful time. I think in the last 2 years, we were open only for, I think, less than a year. So during that period, we really had to pivot, because before that, our business model was very much on exhibition. It was very much about movies. So during the MCO, the first MCO, the second MCO, the third MCO, we focused very much on planning, strategizing, and pivoting businesses. We looked at creating new revenue streams. So if I were to give an example, over the period of the last 2 years, we started F&B. So we started a brand called Happy Food Co. So we now have the first cafe in Salki JB. We also started from there, packaged goods. So we have a premium category of food. So our marketing here a little bit, for those of you who go to GSC, do look out for our Happy Food Co. Popcorn. So we have two types of popcorn. This is terrible. We have two types of popcorn. We have the gourmet caramel as well as the sour cream, which we just launched yesterday. And we have two variety of salmon skin. So things like that were stuff that we would not have tried even before that, because typically you will not have time. Most of the time we will be chasing movie titles and doing, doing promotions. So F&B was one. The second thing was merchandise. So we started our merchandise platform, our online merchandise platform, very, very quickly. In fact, within 3 weeks, we basically took a white label platform and we branded it. Mainly, if you remember as well, we had Hello Cannot, and that actually came out because a lot of people were asking us about whether they could come to cinemas with their girlfriend, boyfriend, sat together with their parents or whatever. And I think our GSC admin, who I cannot reveal his or her name today, okay, in case there's a question later on, got a bit irritated and went, hello, cannot. And from there, we thought, why not we do a series of merchandise, because his brand was also pretty strong and it sold really well. Okay, it took off dramatically. So that started our online platform for merchandise. So that was our second revenue line that we started. So things like that, and situations like that would not have happened without the MCO. So in a way, it was also a little bit of a silver lining, because it allowed us time to plan and to look at how we can, number one, be more sustainable in future, as well as how do we survive the pandemic. Those were very dark days for us, but I think I'm glad to say that we actually emerged stronger. Yeah, and I think in the midst of all that, we also bought MBO. Yeah, some of the key locations were MBO. So there were many things we were doing. A lot of people were inquiring during the pandemic, do you all have work? Actually, yes, we worked really hard and we probably work harder than ever. But I'm glad that's over. Cinemas are open. Jurassic opened yesterday. Here I am again marketing.
Yes.
Okay, and we will be having Minions as well as a lot of other movies coming forward. So please do come to the cinemas.
Thanks for that, Shirley. I think that's really interesting,
To go on for 2 days.
Yeah, is an eye opener to understand as well. Yeah, I am thinking the same thing as well. What is GSC doing during this pandemic? So that is a good insight to me as well. What about for Kausern?
Well, we are a little bit different from GSC. During the pandemic, our business did really well because from an influencer marketing perspective, I think there wasn't anything else to advertise. Everything else, it was kind of closed. You can't do outdoor and so on. So what happened was that a lot of it was moved into digital space. And besides, of course, buying into Facebook and Google and so on, I think the next best thing to buy is actually to buy into influencers, which because they come with creative and so on, right? So the last couple of years, the last 2 years, actually we did really, really well. But coming out of pandemic is quite interesting. We realized that actually our business is being challenged a little bit. Why? Number one, I think a lot of budgets is now kind of like spent elsewhere, distributed elsewhere. And then I think during the pandemic as well, there are a lot more companies like Nuffnang appeared as well, trying to get into influencer marketing space. Because of that, then it kind of like also triggered a lot of supply as well. When I say supply, means a lot more influencers started to be more influencers, right? So there's currently right now where we are, it's actually an oversupply of influencers. Well, I think the good thing is that I don't say the good thing, but actually right now where we are in terms of influencer space is a little bit like Wild Wild West, because there is, how should I say, pricing is not kind of determined, right? Every influencer kind of quote their own price. Then there's also poor work ethic as well from some influencers. I was just sharing with them before this that some influencers decide to appear in this particular event, but decided not to appear halfway through. So a lot of these problems start to appear. So I'm not going to put on my MDA hat right now. So what we're going to do this year actually is we're going to put in place guidelines and benchmark for influencer marketing, where we're going to kind of like determine price range, determine guidelines, determine authenticity and so on. So there's a project that we're going to do at MDA this year, so that we brands can feel safer to actually advertise in the whole area of influencer marketing.
All right, thank you for that. Haikel, over to you.
Yeah, I mean, for us, because reporting was just not the same, right, for journalists during the pandemic. At the thick of the pandemic, press conferences were no longer held, events were cancelled, and lots of these had to go online. And these were just not the same, didn't give the same effect to journalists and the same experience for them to report as previously. And it becomes a challenge as well for companies, brands, and their communications teams to promote and their messaging, their products, their services via online means, especially in companies where their products and services are a lot more tangible. And you got to see it to experience it, or you got to feel it, you got to put it on your face, in your skin. Places you have to travel to, for example. So obviously lots of them suffered quite a lot. And what we did was to allow for them to make sure that all of these or rather their online efforts are able to be seen as much as possible by giving them exposure to the myriad of media that's actually out there for them to actually tap on to make sure that their voices are heard even in small capacities in various media. So not just the big media and the traditional media that they usually would have gone to. And for us at Telemedia as well, networking was actually a big part of our strategy. So not being able to go out to network and getting the word out on what we do really had an effect on our business and our approach in general. But what it actually helped us to do was that it accelerated some of the things we had in the pipeline to do, and it made sure that we moved forward digital wise a lot quicker than what we initially planned to. I'll give you an example. One of the things that I've always planned to do was to do online events, and with the pandemic, we were almost forced into doing online events, and we went into it actually quite early on in the pandemic. So we started to do webinars, which gained in popularity because we started quite early. We captured the audience attention, and they kept on coming back. And now, places like in Singapore, Malaysia, etc., we are able to actually conduct events, but still the online events have proved to be quite popular and has become a mainstay in our valued offerings to our clients and our stakeholders. So yeah, it did help to a certain extent, but we did suffer as well.
Okay, thank you for that. I think the theme around here is that we can what I gather from each one is that there is a silver lining to what has happened during pandemic. A lot of the things that we wanted to do previously, but we didn't have the time to do it, and we get to do it now, during the pandemic. So it's good to see that. It's good to see the positivity coming out of this. So I'm pretty sure that with all of this, the customer segment has also changed, has also expanded. So how has it expanded for your particular industry? So perhaps we can start off with Kausern this round.
Well, how has it changed? I think at the end of the day, again, from influencer perspective, we deal a lot with advertisers, right? So from an advertiser perspective, I think there's way more demand in terms of, I would say demand, actually more of demanding, right? More of demanding, making sure that everything is tracked, making sure that the ROI is there, and so on. So I think that changed a lot because, like I said, there's actually an oversupply of influencers. So there's actually a demand to make sure that every dollar spent meets the KPIs. That's currently the pressure that we're facing.
Okay. And for Shirley?
No, from our perspective, we don't see a change in the audience. Yeah, it's still around. Well, it is still 18 to 35. Now, however, I would say that the way they spend, the expectations would be slightly different. In a way that, number one, one of the other brands that we have would be Aurum, which is the luxury cinema. Now, we opened that cinema just before COVID hit us, so it didn't have a chance. We sort of worked for 3 months, and then we went to the COVID situation. Now, when we opened up, what we did see, however, was a willingness to spend. It was as if all this pent up energy and pent up demand, right? The moment you opened the doors, everyone came back. There was a lot of fear initially that people are not coming back to the cinema. People are scared. Maybe they won't come back ever, because during that time as well, you see people going on Netflix. You go people streaming. But we found it to be otherwise true. The moment we opened our doors, people came back. The expectation obviously slightly differs. So those who are going to Aurum, would expect higher surveys, and they don't mind paying. And you actually get very young consumers or cinema goers going to premium cinemas, which we didn't sort of realize that this could be a potential. But that built up over the last couple of months, and we continue to do good business there. Now, in terms of GSC, we still find that titles is the main reason they come back. So when you have a strong title, for example, we opened end of last year with Spider-Man. It was amazing. I think there's no other word to describe it. It was amazing. And then we followed up with a couple of other big titles. So people do come back. There is very little fear that we see. And the demand is overwhelming. People are spending, people are happy. So we don't actually see a difference in terms of the type of consumers that come. We see more of them coming. So that's very, very good news for us.
That's interesting. Thank you for that. Haikel, any insights from your side?
Yeah, just very, very quickly. I mean, just like Shirley, we didn't see a change in the segmentation. So the segmentation of the audience remained the same because we serve very, very specific group of stakeholders and audience. But what we did see, that the reason why people were coming to us instead of us going to them during the pandemic was the fact that they wanted to reach out to more media. So like I said earlier, it's an opportunity for them to reach out to different types of media, and making sure that even if 100 people are reading that piece of content, they want it to be there. So to help get them there, they need to speak to the right media and the right people in the right media. So it's about getting word out quickly and word out, widely. And then because of that, we saw that there are more people who are willing to actually do PR during COVID rather than before. Which was really, really interesting, because PR is always seen as something that you put on the back burner, and something that is an afterthought, or if you can do it, great. But in the thick of pandemic, that's become one of the priorities for a lot of companies, to make sure that people know that they're still there, because everyone's at home. So how do they get their word out? They need to make sure that they do a little bit of PR, they get onto the digital channels, they get online, and they're doing something. So that helped out a little bit.
All right, thank you. Thank you for all that, all the valuable insights. So, I mean, with all these changes, we need, as a marketers, we always need to be, adaptable. And with that, it means that, we also have to ensure that our stakeholders are on board with us, across the whole organization. They're on board with us in terms of what we are trying to do, especially during the past 2 years, during the trying times. So how is it, that you have, what is it that you have done in order to get, your stakeholders from across the organizations to be on board with you, with what you want to do, with what, activities and, areas that you want to work on? Maybe we can start off with Shirley.
We were very lucky. We are very lucky in a sense, where this transformation for GSC actually started before the pandemic. And we are also an organization where we believe in investing. I think typically for many, many organizations, the moment there's a crisis or something happens, they always cut the marketing fund. They always cut how much you spend, because I think very often branding and marketing is seen as a cost, instead of a revenue stream. I think in GSC, however, we see it slightly differently. Yeah, because the entire way the organization is driven is via innovation. Okay, there's obviously innovation and service for us. So I think innovating and thinking long term rather than, oh, what are we going to do today, actually helped us a lot. Also, we took the view that the pandemic will end. It didn't seem like that at that time, yeah, but we were bent, yeah, on the belief that it will end one day, and when it ends, it's the strongest that will be the first to grab the market share. So I think based on that belief, the entire organization basically then came together. We had a lot of meetings, we had a lot of brainstorming, and it wasn't easy, yeah, because we had the operation staff, and then it's a huge organization. But I think what was really important was everyone was on the same wavelength, and we realized that we had to change. For us, it was very simple. We either change or we die. Yeah, because our model was very much based on movies. So I think there was no other choice. And I think when you don't have another choice, you move very fast. Yeah, you move very efficiently, and you move together. And I think that really worked for us.
Thank you. Kausern?
Well, I think if there's anything for us, during the pandemic, we always say that it's actually the best time to advertise, because a lot of times clients decided to cut back, like you say, right? To cut back and to kind of put it in the bag. But actually, that is where you need to advertise the most, because when the markets are open, just like we had the same kind of outlook as well, the markets will open, right? And whoever who advertises more, people will do remember you more. So that is where kind of like the position that we took.
Okay, but in terms of like, how do you ensure like all your stakeholders buying into whatever that you're trying to do, and what always, usually when we talk about stakeholders, we usually have to show them in terms of like, numbers, So just earlier on, I catch something that you mentioned on that, people tend to look at what would be the KPI for it. So what do you use in order, to kind of like convince them to say that this is a good way to go, or this is something that we should try, whether we make it or we fail, but at least this is something good that we should, do.
Well, I think let's look at it. Before the pandemic happens, a lot of times influencer marketing is looked at as a very top funnel thing, like a branding thing, right? So a lot of times, some clients will come to us and say, hey, I want to put influencer marketing, but I want to have X number of sales. And we should say that is not really an effective way to use influencers, because it's very much branding. But one thing we realized that during the pandemic, you realize that a lot of them actually get online to sell things, the live selling thing, which is quite interesting, because almost immediately you can kind of like address everything from the top of the funnel all the way up to conversion. So that was quite interesting. So I think at the time, we as a company, what we did was we quickly wanted to create a tech piece to help to help the host and to help the influencers actually sell better. So what it is that if you can see, I think during the pandemic time, you can see a lot of them selling groceries, fish, and so on, right? Yep. As you see quite kelam kabut. I mean, you see some of them actually like really like like, oh no, the right stuff and put up there everywhere and so on, right? And there lies an opportunity, yeah, that we realized that when we start speaking to them, they after that, there's a lot more work to do. There's actually have to do a lot of capturing. There's some over order. They don't know how much stocks and so on. So we created a piece of tech where at the back end wise itself, you can kind of key in all this ordering stuff before you even get on live. So once you go live, whoever who orders, what you're going to do is just kind of click +1 or +2 on the item. Everything is captured in that system itself, right? So then the person who's selling it just takes an hour just to kind of like make sure everything's out there, and then just press send to deliver the product. So it actually saves the seller a lot more time. So I think this is one of the areas where we realized that again tech did help a lot. And now kind of post-pandemic, we realized that actually the argument of influencer marketing just addressing the top funnel is not true. Actually, you can actually address all the way down to the bottom funnel in terms of live selling as well.
Yeah, that's true. It opens up like opportunities. Yeah, absolutely. Haikel, any insights from your side?
Yeah, I just wanted to just add, in terms of internal stakeholders as well, there's a challenge for teams and marketing teams and communications teams to actually sell on their approach
Yes.
to your internal stakeholders, to your C-suites, to your management, right? So sometimes I would just say, it's always easier to ask for forgiveness than it is for permission, right? so to
That's
just to
what we
just
do,
go
huh?
but to just go for it honestly, especially in terms of if you truly believe in it, and if you're able to produce great results in the first instance you do it, the chances are it will keep on happening, and you might get a bit more money to actually do it later on as well. So I would say just go for it, and to just produce the results if you're really really confident about it. And if you know your audience, if you know what you're doing, and you know what you're trying to achieve, more often than not, you'll get there.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for that. Okay, last but not least, but I think this is like the most important question, is that with all the changes that we have, at least for the past 2 years, how has that affected the investment in marketing? I think Shirley has, addressed that a little bit just now, but, it'll be good to hear it from the rest as well, But yes, Shirley, if you can, go on, if you want to add into whatever that you have mentioned earlier on.
I think consumer insight is very important. Yeah. When I first started in branding and marketing, we used to say that, you can't measure branding because it's for the long term. But I think somehow as well, that has changed, because if you look at how we buy media today and how we use media today, like Kausern just said just now, right? If you go online, conversion is something that can be measured quite directly. And that's what we do as well, in GSC. I think in terms of getting the investment, the question that needs to be answered at the end of the day is, what is it for, and what value does it give the organization? I think branding for branding's sake, you will probably never get a yes from the management, or from your stakeholders saying that, why should I be spending this money? Because post-pandemic, you will see that most organizations will be cutting back. There's a lot of price increases at the moment. You need to adjust your pricing. You need to look at supply. So obviously, the nice to have will be first to go. And again, like I said, for a lot of companies, branding or marketing would be nice to have. But if we can actually prove to show that, with every cent that I'm investing, this is what I'm getting back for the organization. For us, it's very simple. It's footfall. It is sales per head. It is basically strike rate. So we measure things like that. So every time there is an investment request that goes across, or a new initiative that we want to put in place, I think it is very, very important to look at number one, an omni-channel approach, and number two, an ROI. I think as marketeers, typically we may not like those questions,
Yes.
but unfortunately, at this day and age, right, you can't really escape it. There must be some return, for every cent that you invest in. So we're still investing. We're investing more and more, but
Yeah, absolutely agree with you on the ROI part of it. Because yes, as marketeers, usually you'll shy away to say the ROI part. How do we measure that and things like that? But that is the most important, in the whole marketing scheme. Kausern?
Yeah, I was just busy taking notes. These are the things that is important to you, so I think I remember. Business, okay. Right. I think definitely in terms of you realize that the investment in advertising and marketing, especially this year, has actually shrunk, right? A little bit. Reason being because, especially from companies like FMCGs and so on, realize that because of the whole supply chain issue, the war, climate change, and all these things, right, kind of like really affected production, right? So as a result, they have to take some money out to kind of produce the same can of Coke or same pack of Maggie mee in this case, right? So a lot of it has to come from somewhere. So what happens is they actually cut off from the marketing budget. And what happens is that as a result, now with the markets being all open, now there's going to be more so-called different type of media publishers and owners wanting that piece of the pie. from outdoor to on ground. So currently, right now, the hottest thing right now is on ground. So everyone wants to have a space somewhere, to and in fact, even during the pandemic, e-commerce actually went up, but now actually e-commerce has kind of like stabilized a little bit, and dropped a little bit actually. So I think right now, I think it's kind of it is you'll find its way to course correct itself, you know. But at the end of the day, in order for us to justify, like what should I say, in order for us to justify any spends, you need to be able to first of all kind of ask what is really important to the client in this case, right? So in this case, if it's footfall ROIs and so on, it's important. Then we need to be able to say, do we have all the necessary tools to be able to address those things? But if you don't have those things, I think that's uh, we shouldn't be selling those things anyway, right? Because we will do a bad job anyway at it. I think for if I were to be in a CMO position, I think CMO plays a very, very important role these days. Reason being because you're at the epicenter of data, which is extremely important, right? And you have probably the most rich collection of data everywhere compared to the other so-called departments, right? And as a result of that, data informs you a lot of things. Number one, informs you of innovation, right? What can you do? What are, like, for example, you were saying that you realize that a lot of younger folks wanting to go into RM, right? So what else can you do with those things? But those data informs that. So suddenly the marketing position holds a very important role on that. Second, besides that, of course, is agile marketing. So with data, you can quickly turn things around. So I think the CMO these days, the skill sets that is much needed, is way beyond just understanding branding and so on. You need to understand. You need to have digital literacy. You need to have data visualization. You need to learn how to be more collaborative, inclusive, and all other things. So I think it's a very interesting space to be in. Yeah, it's a very interesting space to be in. So that's my point of view. Long-winded, but great question.
Thank you for that. And Haikel, any input from your side as well?
Again, very quickly, because Shirley and Kausern has covered so much. It's so important, and I can't emphasize on ROIs and KPIs, which I would not try to cover again, but it's just so important. But I also wanted to cover in terms of going out and speaking to the media and getting your share of voice in the media. It's so important. It's such a simple thing, but people tend to forget to understand the media you're speaking to, be it for editorial content or paid content. There's so much sponsored content opportunities that's going on in the media right now that can be capitalized and it can be optimized on. It's again quite plain and quite simple, but understanding who's the audience of the media that you're speaking to before you actually put your investment in that is so key to the ROIs that we talk about. Understanding their style, their approach, their voice, and your take and your management's take in their writing. Does it fit with your messaging as well? Because if you want to speak and you want to put investment in these, then you got to make sure that in the first off, it works and it works well. Otherwise, there's a lot of repercussions and lots of recovery work that you have to do. Yes, it can be it can be salvaged at the end of the day, but there's a lot more work that you need to put in. Understanding also the different areas of the media that you can work with, because gone are days where media is just your print advertising and just a 30-second ad, for example. There's so many different areas and so many permutations to it that you can actually work with, and media companies and organizations are always open to now speaking with clients to be able to do that effectively. Again, like I said, both editorially and also in paid terms as well. And last thing you probably can do as well to ensure that when you are working with the media, to not leave it in their hands totally to dictate what they can actually do for you. Be useful to them, work hand in hand. I feel that when we work in media, they serve as an additional layer of additional of hands to be able to help get your word out there. So it's meant to be a team and collaborative effort. So be useful in, for example, the handouts you're giving to them, or this in creation of those stories and content, for example, or what's the data you can provide, what's the thought leaders you can provide, for example, what's the images and videos and infographics that you can provide. Those are so useful to the media. Depends on how they translate those to content and to messaging to your audience, but they could be crucial in getting the right messaging out for you and for your company.
All right, thank you for that. I think right now we will be open for questions from the audience. Okay, so the first question: with the evolved media landscape, what are the changes in traditional media versus digital media, and how do we measure the success of each of it? I guess in terms of media-wise, this question would go to Haikel.
Well, yeah, it's a very interesting question. In terms of changes between traditional media and versus digital media, I mean, we covered a little bit earlier. There has to be a balance. Yes, we've seen the shift, and in a survey that we did last year, we conduct a survey to people who work in the media industry and trying to understand what are the areas of importance to them being in the media. They've all said that one of the most important skills in 3 to 5 years to come are the digital skills. And to quote also SEO, that went up from 45%, or went up to 45% from 24%. So we look at it right now, what they needed right now versus in 3 to 5 years. There was a big jump to say that digital skills is highly important. So that there's definitely a skew towards the media also putting their investments in there to make sure that that's successful for them. The other area that's become a lot more important is, of course, which is Kausern's obviously expertise, is social media. In 3 to 5 years, they've said that 71% of 71% of them said that social media will grow in importance in actually not in 3 to 5 years, in 2022 itself. And that went up from just 40% last year. So it's again a big shift. So the traditional media will always be there. There are people who still consume it. It's just the amount of investment that you would want to put within the different channels has to be put into good thought. Again, in understanding the audience, understanding the efficacy of what you are trying to push out there, the form of content that you are actually trying to push out there obviously makes a big difference as well. So who you're trying to speak to will also be able to help you determine that who you'll be trying to reach out. So it means that who's the media and who you're trying to reach out to. So in terms of measuring success, I don't have the answer for this, unfortunately. I think I think there's just very different ways on how we can measure success these days. It's not always tangible. I do agree with Shirley highlighting the fact that sometimes it is long term, but we do need to show the efficacy of what we do in the short term as well. And sometimes it's just within the metrics that are available to you immediately. How many people read the particular article? How many people actually saw that particular video? How many people listened to that podcast that you put out? So yeah, I do think that that's important shift that you actually need to identify. And my last point is that to not be afraid to do things on your own as well. Media organizations now have established their own channels of marketing to be able to push out their messages directly from their own platforms. So that is probably one of the best ways, or one of the cheapest way for you to put an investment in to begin with, if you have the ability and the resources to.
All right, thank you for that. Shirley, do you have some comments that you want to put through to the question?
Well, for GSC, we mainly spend on digital. Yeah, that for us works the best. And also, I think it's easily measured. Yeah, because we do measure conversion, we do measure results. Now, but what I do say, however, is I agree with Haikel. Yeah, I think there's always a place for traditional media. Always a place for traditional media. I don't think that's going to go away. But I think the most important thing is, I think a lot of emphasis, like Haikel said just now, yeah, on digital branding, digital content creator and stuff. But what I find in my experience is, even if that person is very, very good, yeah, or the content creator is very good, they must understand the business. They must understand what is it that the organization or what their consumers are looking for. Again, I think this goes back to consumer insight. And I think the digital media will only work for you effectively if you really understand who you're communicating to, and what is it that you want, what result is it that you want from there. So it's very easy. And because because we are also a media owner, we have a lot of clients who may come to us and say, oh, I'm going to shift things to digital. Yes, okay, and it's always back on, the click, the eyeballs, it's to them, it's a lot more value for money. I don't disagree with that. Now, however, if your content is rubbish, yeah, or it doesn't really say anything, then you're still wasting a lot of money. What is most important is, I think, understanding the problem at hand and what is it that you need to address. Marry that with your consumer insight and come up with a plan that, whether or not it straddles traditional media or digital media, I think that's secondary. I think what's important is you really need to look at crafting a plan that addresses your consumer requirements. Yeah, so that's the slightly different take on that. Yeah, that's a very good point.
Kausern, yourself?
Yeah, I think a lot of points was covered. I just want to pull out certain things.
Yep.
Like at least in the influencer marketing industry, a lot of times, when we talk to clients will say, oh, so who is under Nuffnang? Actually, these days, there is no longer anybody under Nuffnang in terms of the influencers. They are all independent contractors these days, right? They're all freelancers, right? There lies actually the opportunity, because everybody, including our competitors, have the same access to this pool of influencers as well. But what makes a company different is, I think, what Shirley, as well as Haikel has said, is really about the marketing strat, a banging marketing strat, right? Which is deep in insights. And so I think we go through this framework called DDD, right? Which is discovery, design, and deliver, right? So discovery is essentially to discover really what the client wants. So I think there's a lot more deeper conversations these days. I think people need to be trained to ask really important, pressing questions. Ask questions like, not like just what's the objective and so on, but really to ask like, what is your real challenge, right? Yeah. And then from there to kind of like move on to designing an experience for the client. So like in this case, we will probably use influencers. Now that doesn't stop there. I think we realize that a lot of times campaigns which work really well for us is where we actually bring in all parties involved, including the content creator itself. I think Haikel was saying it, to collaborate, to kind of sit down to say, okay, look, what are the superpowers, right? What can you say, what can you do, and so on. And then immediately, it's almost like a half day, lock yourself up in a place and then just discuss what we can do about this. Is it a one-time off? Is it always on, and so on? So I think that part is a lot of times is missing from what it's currently. It's a lot of just kind of like passing down the assembly line. So at the end of the day, when the actual execution is out itself, it's like, hey, this is not what I really want, right? Because right from the start, we didn't spend time in working out what is really what the client wants and what we can deliver, right? So then thereafter, in terms of, so number one, discovery; second, in terms of designing the whole experience; and the third one is, like all things, like all campaigns, 90% of success is execution. So the third part is deliver, right? So it needs to have flawless execution. I think the flawless execution part is where there's a little bit much more. You need more structure. So whether is it traditional, whatever, someone needs to be able to make sure there's proper trafficking, make sure that everyone's speaking to each other. Timing, sequencing, and all these things are very important, because it's no longer just buying full page, full color, right? But it is way more than everything's integrated. Everything is all omni. So I think whoever is handling these agencies or the marketing itself needs to have a hand of a grip of every single thing down the line. So I think, again, and Haikel was saying that you have like skills like social media, you need to understand that and so on. In fact, I think a lot of times when speaking to the marketing folks or CMOs and so on, you just say that, you know what, you're right. I think maybe you have to try to be a media yourself, try to be an influencer yourself. Just try it, right? Yeah, I mean, how does that work, right? So I mean, it's know where your audience is, right? And then from there, then kind of know what your audience want in terms of content. Then these days it's actually quite easy to start putting out a thought leadership, right? That what do you really believe in, what do you stand for, and so on. Because at the end of the day, people buy from people. People don't buy product they say, right? So if you have got a perspective, if you have something to say, I think you should put it out on social media and start having some kind of structure and start building your own personal brand. I think that is what I would just say. I mean, it's easier said than done because it's like, oh, but I'm shy, that kind of thing. But I think it's a bit difficult these days. I think you have to be, you have to force yourself to a little bit to put yourself out there if you really want to people to remember you. So that's kind of my POV on that.
Thank you for that, Kausern. I think one key point I picked up as well is that in this new kind of like current situation or environment that we are in, collaboration is definitely one of the keyword that there is so many different. We are not talking about traditional versus digital. It's really like the omni-channel of it. The integration of both sides as well. So collaboration is definitely one of the key for us in marketing. Yeah. Shall we take the second question? Okay. Do we see the trend of digital media playing a bigger role as compared to traditional media? I think we have more or less covered that in all the comments coming from all the three panelists. Maybe if any one of you would like to give one or two sentence kind of like summary to it.
I would just say yes, but to not see digital as a linear approach, because again, to emphasize, there's so many different avenues and channels that you can actually explore. What works for you or what works for someone else, or what works for someone else may not necessarily work for you. And there's always room for you to just keep on exploring and to really just make sure that when you do explore, you put some thought into it before. So the planning part is so important.
All right. Thank you for that, Haikel. Shall we move on to the next question? What's the right metrics used to gauge the success of branding? Shirley, would you like to take that on first?
I would say now branding for us and for me specifically, personally as well, is very wide. Yeah, when someone talks about branding, what do they actually mean by that? So my perspective is, okay, if I were to measure the success of branding, and I'll speak specifically on GSC, it would be, for example, my customer satisfaction index. Okay, that would be a number one metric that we look at. Number two would be my market share. Yeah, market share has to be measured. Yeah, when we look at successful branding. Number three, we would also look at revenue. Now, this is not a direct correlation for most organizations and for most brand managers, I would say. Yeah, but again, at some point, we will have to quantify, the need for branding. Again, like what Haikel said just now, I think there's a long-term effect, where you basically do branding to make sure that your brand is always healthy and it's sort of better looking than your next competitor or so. Yeah, because we do have to cut through the clutter. But ultimately, by doing that, you need to measure results. So for us, it's very direct because we're also in an industry where we can easily measure. Yeah. So for some other industries, it could be a little bit difficult, but I think we, as marketeers, we should always strive to be able to quantify or to be able to come out with measurements on, what you consider as success for branding. Just one last thing before I end. Right, this is a question that I often ask myself, or I ask the team when we come up with a brand plan. If this is your business, what would you do? Yeah, and I think when you personalize it that way, the answer becomes clear. Yeah, if this is your business, would you do the same? If the answer is no, then your plan probably cannot make it lah.
Okay. Thanks for the insight. Kausern, any input from your side?
Yeah, so I think I'd like to probably put it from an individual perspective. I think to
Mm.
me, branding is very much reputation, right? So it's like, for example, if you want to uh, have an online reputation of so and so, when someone asks, say, like, when you think of Kausern, what do you think of him, right? So it's very much similar to branding, right? So when you think about, for example, GSE, what do you think of it? So there are many ways to actually track all those things, right? So from what you say, from revenue to surveys, all the way to even simple things like comments, engagement, and so on every post that you put out. But of course, you just can't take one post and say it is good. What Haikel was saying, it's long term, right? So you need to take a collection of all these things and kind of figure it out. At the end of the day, is it going up, trending up, or is it trending down? So there's also things like, for example, social media listening tools to kind of like comb around the social media and see what people are saying about you as well. So I think at the end of the day, as long as all the stakeholders determine to say, okay, what is a healthy brand and how do we track it? And these are all the measurements that need to be put in place to say that we are up or we are neutral or we never change or we're down. So we kind of put all these things in place, including uh, uh, all that we mentioned just now. Then at the end of the day is to kind of figure out and analyze to say, hey, are we doing good or are we doing bad? Yeah, so that's kind of it's not like a one-off thing, but it's over time.
Okay. And Haikel, from
Yeah,
your side?
very quickly, because there must be a reason why metrics has been a long-standing conversation for many years, and it keeps on
Yes.
coming up in every single discussion that we all sit down to speak about. And I think that the answer to that is because there's no one standard universal metric that we can all abide to and say that it works. And I would challenge for people to actually approach it at the very beginning of your campaigns, for Marcom practitioners to just think about what actually success will eventually look like. So if success looks a lot like your eventual output, then great. If it does not, then it's back to the drawing board. So if you are able to determine what success actually looks like at the very beginning of your planning stages, then that should be the metric that you should be sticking by.
Okay, thank you.
So just to add on, I think
Sure.
with digital, I think what's good is that you can course correct along the way as well.
True.
Yeah, so some things is difficult to correct. So I think this is where the upside of digital is you can course correct.
That's right. Okay. Shall we take on one last question before we, wrap up the session? Okay. Any thoughts of data integrity and how to maintain a high level of data integrity for marketing effectiveness? So shall I put this question towards Kausern first?
Yeah, I think I will probably answer it from perspective of influencers follower count. There has always been a problem, right? It says like, oh, is this real or not, that kind of thing, right? So there are actually a few ways to actually track whether is the influencer buying audience or not, right? So first thing first, I think there are third-party tools out there which actually would be able to give you certain kind of trend to say like how, like in terms of audience wise, how has it been growing. So I think it is our job in this case to make sure we look at it and say, was there a very strange spike at a certain time, and kind of say, how come there's a spike here, right? That is where usually we become a bit suspicious, right?
Okay.
So you look into that. You have to eyeball that actually. On top of that, besides audience, you also have to look into things like the engagement as well. So a person may have, like, for example, 1.5 million followers, but in terms of the engagement is extremely low, right? Because I don't know. So then we realize that, hey, again, why is this so? We have to investigate. Is it because again, just buying bots, so that's why hence there's not much engagement. Yeah, so these are things which we have to look at before we even propose a particular influencer to a brand. So that's how we track in terms of data integrity.
Okay. Is there any check and balance in terms of this data integrity when it comes to influencer, Kausern?
What do you mean by check and balance?
Meaning that, let's say when you see like engagement is low, and then but the followers is high, is there anything that in terms of guidelines or anything like that that could be done with all this?
Yeah, I think we will stay away from some of them.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the main thing.
Mm.
We stay away from them. Or we just kind of like just investigate and just ask to say, hey, we realize there's a spike here. What's going on?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Shirley, any input from your side?
I think at this point, collection of data is very important to begin with. Yeah. So I think it's rubbish in, rubbish out. So we place a great importance in making sure that the data that we collect are clean. Yeah. And I think this means that you have to do continuous cleansing. You basically have to make sure that your data is up to date. You have to make sure that what people fill in would be true, because you also have people who go in and sort of claim that they're either younger or whatever. Yeah. So this data would not be clean. But I think for us, as you go along and as the person start using the services, you're able to capture the data. Yeah. And then like Kausern said, through time you see a trend. And basically then you understand how they're using, when they're using, what is it that they're using, how they're purchasing, all their behaviors. So I think in terms of the data is dead, yeah, at the end of the day. Data is just data. What is important is what you do with the data and how you use it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think that for us is extremely important because it allows us to retarget. So I think if you maintain the data actively and making sure that it's always managed, then I think the problem of data integrity it will not arise. However, it does require a lot of effort, and I think it's a job for more than one person, basically a team, because you need to read it and stuff like that too.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you on that. Yeah. Haikel, any input from your side?
Again, I would not try to repeat what Kausern and Shirley has covered because so important what they've said. But I wanted to point out what media practitioners have actually said in the survey again that we conducted, that they've said that data has become so important to them, and verifying data and also making sure that data is accurate has been important to them for when we actually report to the media about our achievements and our if we don't want to shout about our achievements as well. So that's become of importance to the media clearly as we move forward. Obviously, with the proliferation of fake news and all that, that's become so important. So in how you collect the data and how you use the data eventually, like what Shirley pointed out, data is just data. How you use it thereafter is what's important. So it's just quite crucial in making sure that you've got accuracy, you've got a good standard of how you're collecting the data before you actually push it out to use it as a tactic or to announce to the world thereafter.
Okay. Thank you for that. I think with that we conclude our session today. I think it has been really interesting and insightful, coming from not only from like a consumer, but also from a digital space as well as the media space as well. So thank you so much to Shirley, Kausern, and also Haikel. I think today's session has been really wonderful. I look forward to see you guys again. Thank you for all. I'm passing it back to Myra.
Thank you.